I have now made 3 episodes, so this is my 4th episode, and one kind of a blog post in which I was which was summary of our honeymoon replay holiday in Dominican Republic. Now it's Saturday, 28th of March. We are living really peculiar times all over the world at the moment because of the COVID-19 pandemic. I hope you are all staying safe and you are doing well, and I hope that you will listen what your government or authorities say to do. In Finland we have a policy that all the schools are closed. Also, if it's possible to do work from home, it's recommended. And then for me, I'm in quarantine because our holiday trip after Dominican Republic, it was told that everyone who were coming to Finland from a holiday or from another country should stay in quarantine like conditions. So I have stayed at home now 12 days, so I have 2 more days quarantine left. I haven't even been in a grocery store. I have ordered food to home, and I have put my oldest kids to the grocery store if we needed something quickly. Today the border of Uusimaa, which is the southern part of Finland, is closed, so we can't go anywhere from this area to the northern Finland or eastern Finland or anywhere from Uusimaa for 3 weeks. So we are kind of stuck here. Fortunately, I don't have to go anywhere from here, so it's not that big deal for me, but I know it's inconvenient for lots of people at the moment. But we'll hope we will survive from this pandemic. We have survived similar ones before, so because of we have to do all that the infection curve doesn't go too high, so stay home and be safe. In today's episode I was thinking about talking about my knitting history or knitting past, and I was going to tell you about how I started to design knitwear and how I started to publish patterns on Ravelry. I started to knit when I was probably 8 years old. My grandmother taught me to first knits and pearls, and then I started. Of course, in Finland they still taught us to knit at schools, and from those days when I was in elementary school, we have to knit socks or mittens at least when we were 11 or 12 years old. So I remember that I knitted some mittens and probably some socks back then, and after that I started to knit larger garments. I thought that I would like to make my own sweaters, so I started to calculate my own stitches and started to knit my own sweaters. I didn't use any patterns, at least I don't remember to use any patterns, so I kind of, at least in terms of those sweaters, I just calculated my stitches and started to knit very simple sweaters. I don't have those sweaters when that I knit back then. I was 13, 14, 15, 16 years old when I made sweaters at that time, but I remember that a few years back I found 2 of them, but now when I started to search them again, I couldn't find them at all. I probably have recycled them or something like that. But I have a picture of one of those sweaters. I can put it here. It was I wore it in one of my school photographs, so that's why I have that picture still with me. The sweater that I have in that picture is made of kind of funny yarn, I think. At least nowadays it's more funny than a beautiful yarn. The base of the yarn was white, and then there was neon colored bubbles and plumps or something like that in that yarn, and probably it was acrylic or cotton or some kind of mixed, at least it wasn't wool, but 100% wool, but some of it might have been wool, some of it acrylic. I remember that it felt fluffy, but it wasn't that horrible, the feeling of the sweater. It was kind of nice to wear. It was warm, so I think there was wool in that yarn, but probably some kind of other materials like acrylic or cotton maybe. I don't know. After that, I kind of forgot knitting for a while. When I started to study at the university, I didn't knit much. I started to knit again when I was pregnant with my first child. I started to knit socks and some small projects, beanies and mittens and smaller projects. But then after a while I started to knit larger pieces again, shawls, and then I remember that I made some sweaters, and at that time I think I found Ravelry. It was about 12 years ago, and after that I realized that I think that finding Ravelry was kind of mind-blowing for me, because I think that that was the first time when I realized that you could knit garments without any seaming. I haven't realized that before, and that was something that was new to me. And after that, I started to knit everything top down, because I liked the idea that I could try the sweater or cardigan on when it was approximately at this point when I was separating sleeves and body. So I felt that I could knit really well-fitted cardigans and sweaters. And then I also started again, because I was designing my own knitwear when I was a teenager. Quite quickly I didn't find it easy to follow patterns, because I always wanted to make my own modifications. So I started to make my own patterns, so I could get just the garments that I liked. If you hear some background noise, my son is playing some video game in the room next to this room, so there is some loud noises when he is discussing with his friends online. Where was I? Yes, I started to design approximately 10 years ago when I had my second son. Well, I could talk about my grandmother a little bit more, because she was also a designer. She also knitted some knitwear and designed knitwear, and she published in Finnish magazines in 1950s and 1960s. But because I started to knit do my knitwear designing work when my grandmother was already having Alzheimer's disease, and she couldn't recognize her family and friends or close relatives even. So I couldn't discuss at that point when I started to design my own knitwear. She was already in a condition in which she couldn't, at least she couldn't knit anymore, and then she couldn't talk to her relatives and close ones, because the disease had gone so far, so it was impossible for her to discuss about anything. So I couldn't talk and discuss about my designing stuff with her, which was kind of shame, because I could have talked about this top-down designing and asked all kinds of stuff from her, but I couldn't do that. But to my second child, he was really allergic to everything when he was a baby. So I had a really difficult time back then, because I had to always carry my child or pushed his proms around our little, this is kind of part of Helsinki in which we live, which I think it's more a village than a real city-like surroundings. So I always pushed him around in his proms so he could sleep a while. Of course, when I was pushing him around, I couldn't knit or I couldn't do anything else but just push him. So back at home, I just carried him around in a baby bag in front of me, and then I was knitting and walking around in our house at that time. Also, I started when it started to he born in February, so when it started to turn warmer and I could knit outside, I was sitting in our small yard, or we didn't have a garden, but anyway, in our garden swing, I was sitting in our garden swing and kind of swaying the proms with my leg and pushing and rocking the proms with my legs, so he could sleep he could sleep for a while and I could knit. So the knitting back then, 10 years ago, was a therapy for me. And in the evenings when my husband was carrying him around, I could also write some notes about my knitting. I started to write also patterns and creating stuff, because I started to think that I have to do something with my brain. I wanted to do something that I could use my brain in it. So I started to create patterns, and I started to calculate other sizes and write patterns in English. And why in English? Well, probably because I haven't read much Finnish patterns, because I have always knit and designed my own stuff, so I can't actually read Finnish patterns that well. So when I find Ravelry, and I was learning kind of knit again after my long break, after my years of studying, I started to knit again in English. So everything I knit, I was thinking in English also. So for me, it was easier to write patterns in English first. And nowadays I translate all of my patterns in Finnish too, but it's still easier for me to think in English when I knit. What else? Well, that's about it. Then I started to design more and knit more after my second child started to walk and move. His stomach pains, which made him made sleeping difficult for him, got easier. So so I was able to knit more, and after a while I realized that I'm in a position that I can't stop. I just have to knit and have to write patterns. It's kind of my passion and style of living. I need to have something to do with my hands all the time, so it's a way of life in which I've used to, and also it's something that I have. It's easy for me to do when I'm with my kids. For example, if I play something with them, with cards or some board game, I can easily knit at the same time. So it's really easy for me to do something else while I'm knitting. That's about it. I'm talking about more about things that you have liked to hear about my day job, which I have, and about my knitting designing process more detailed in future episodes. In this episode I don't have much to show you. I have some caked yarn here which are waiting to be cast on. This is fingering weight yarn for one sweater. I've just finished one sweater, but it's in my pile of pattern writing, so it's I don't want to show you it for now, but in the next episode I think I have something to show you again. And about this cardigan that I'm wearing today, it's my Koivu cardigan. I designed it last year, if I remember right. It's really simple styled cardigan with some lace in the back. And it's also worked from top down with contiguous sleeve construction, so the sleeves are really well fitted. Okay, thank you for joining me, and thank you for watching. Stay safe and stay healthy, and see you next time. Bye!